Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jonathan Mehta Stein, the Executive Director of California Common Cause. Welcome to Lunch with California Common Cause, our weekly opportunity to chat with our members and others interested in building a better and more inclusive California democracy. Weirdly, during Lunch with Common Cause, I never actually eat lunch. You could change that, I guess, but then you'd be watching me eat spaghetti or something, which I think nobody wants. I am dressed down today to show you my Census 2020 WeHel account. When you respond to Everyone Benefits t-shirt. Census enumerators are now in the field. The Census Bureau is delayed because of COVID by many, many months. But the census enumerators, maybe some of you have been census enumerators, census takers in the past, or you're familiar with them. They are now in the community, going door to door to meet households where people have not responded to the census. The Census Bureau is being manipulated by the Trump administration. As I'm sure many of you know, every democratic institution feels like it's being manipulated by the Trump administration. But the Census Bureau is doing its best under difficult circumstances and direction from the Trump administration that is making its job harder. Today, I'm joining you solo and hope to provide you with an update on our work in a couple different areas. Voting rights, November 2020, and USPS, that'd be number one. Redistricting will be number two, and then a quick note about our money in politics work. But first, before I jump in, next week, we are joined by two fantastic staff members at Asian Americans Advancing Justice Asian Law Caucus, Julia Marks and Adria Orr. We'll be talking about low voter participation among California's API community and what we feel the explanations are. If you've heard me talk on Lunch with California Common Cause or on Twitter or at any public event ever, basically, I have kept on noting, or I've always noted, that despite the fact that California has made real progress with making voting and voter registration easier and more accessible, we still have really dramatic voter participation disparities on the basis of race and the basis of age. Just as an example, in the March primary here in California, only 22% of eligible APIs in California voted, only 23% of eligible Latinos voted, and among everyone else, 49.5% voted. So API and Latino communities are voting in some instances at less than half the rate of the rest of the electorate. We can talk about that next week with Julia and Adria. We'll talk about the diversity of the API community and how that complicates voter outreach. We'll talk about language access and how California needs to build a multilingual democracy in order to really reach everyone we need to reach. And we'll talk about poll monitoring. When I was at Asian Law Caucus for 4 years, we led a number of poll monitoring programs. It's actually quite funny. The poll monitoring work in which volunteers go to the polls on election day or in the early vote period to make sure that voting laws are being complied with, to make sure that language access is being provided, to make sure that disability access is available. It's led by Asian Law Caucus in Northern California and by California Common Cause in Southern California. And so it's an area that I have a lot of expertise with, and Julia and Adria have a lot of expertise with. And we'll talk about poll monitoring on election day and how you can get involved if you're interested. Okay, so let's move to voting rights and USPS, which I'm sure is on everyone's mind. So first and foremost, let me just speak to California specifically. California elections officials are now making their plans for November 2020. There is a dramatic need for more voting sites and more poll workers, specifically bilingual poll workers. So what's the situation with voting sites? By this time in any normal election, every elections official would be pretty much nailed down on all their voting sites. Why are we in dire straits in California this year? Well, the reason is that the elections officials want much more space than they've used previously so they can ensure social distancing at voting locations, and because the state has mandated that if you're going to use a fewer number of larger voting sites, you have to have them open for 4 days. And so finding sites that are larger, but also available for a 4-day vote period is proving to be difficult. So if you know a location that is 2,500 square feet, perhaps, give or take a little bit, it has available parking, and it's ADA compliant, I want you to contact your elections office and reach out to see if you can offer up find some sort of collaboration with your elections office in which you can offer up a location that will work as a voting site. Some really, really big counties around California right now are struggling to find the voting sites they need. The other piece of this is bilingual poll workers. So I've shared in past versions of Lunch with California Common Cause that we did a set of focus groups with Mandarin speakers, Vietnamese speakers, Spanish speakers, Korean speakers, Tagalog, Filipino speakers, Hmong speakers, and English-speaking youth. And so lots of low propensity voters, lots of first-time voters, lots of limited English-speaking voters. And what we found is that there's still a substantial chunk of folks who want to vote in person despite the presence of the pandemic. And the number one reason why was they wanted language assistance from bilingual poll workers or from a bilingual ballot voting machine that offers a bilingual voting experience. So what that means is that despite the fact that it's hard to recruit poll workers in the middle of a pandemic, we really, really need bilingual folks to step up. And so if you feel like for whatever reason, you can bear some additional risk by serving as a poll worker. Let's say you're not in an at-risk population and you have language skills, please contact your county elections office and see if they're in need. If you're wondering how to contact your county elections office, the answer there is just Google it. But additionally, the California Secretary of State maintains one website where it lists every single county elections office, their address and their phone number. And so if you're able to find that on the Secretary of State's website, you can find your information. Okay, let's talk about USPS, which I'm sure is on everybody's mind. If you're like me, you're sort of freaking out about the status of the Postal Service, which prior to 2020 is not a thing I would have ever imagined myself thinking. It's not a sort of anxiety spiral that I would have ever had any reason to believe would be part of my life, and yet here we are. So as you probably know, Postmaster General DeJoy, a Trump mega donor with no prior USPS experience, is working, it seems, pretty actively to undermine the Postal Service from the inside. That has included shutting down or removing mail sorting equipment. It's shutting down or removing blue mailboxes. It's included cutting overtime hours and forcing Postal Service employees to, for example, end work right at 5 p.m. so that they don't have to be paid overtime, even if it means leaving mail unsorted or undelivered. All of this, of course, jeopardizes our ability to run an election system in 2020 that will be heavily reliant on vote by mail because of the presence of the virus. Now, DeJoy has already been forced to backpedal on some of these changes and has said that he won't make any more changes before the election. There was really widespread outcry over the last several days about all this, and as you probably have seen in the news and on social media. But DeJoy will not commit to fixing the damage that's already been done. He will not commit to reversing any of the changes that have been made to this point. And for example, the question of whether or not postal workers and other employees will be paid overtime in order to make sure that ballots by the hundreds of millions perhaps are delivered in the period before the election. There's been no commitment to that. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, this is just a cost-saving measure, perhaps. I mean, how do we know that he's not implementing needed reforms at the Postal Service? Well, President Trump has basically admitted that he doesn't want USPS funded because they need the money in order to deliver millions of vote-by-mail ballots. I mean, he is just on the record as saying that he doesn't want to fund USPS because if he doesn't fund USPS, they don't have the money they need in order to mail the ballots. And if they can't mail the ballots, then, I think it helps him win re-election. I think it's pretty clear that that's what's going on. So the news here is that we're suing. I probably buried the lead. I probably should have gotten that a lot earlier, but over the course of this week, a number of lawsuits have been filed, including one in which we are acting as plaintiffs along with the National Urban League and the League of Women Voters, represented by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. And we are joining the flood of lawsuits against the manipulation of the USPS, which is a piece with manipulation of the census and manipulation of other democratic institutions. So what can you do specifically in order to make sure that your vote is counted? Well, in California, we're relatively well positioned. First and foremost, most California counties are going to have a wide network of drop boxes that are run by the elections office. And so you can just deposit your vote by mail ballot in a drop box instead of using the mail. If you do use the mail And as long as your ballot is postmarked by Election Day, under California law, your ballot will be accepted if it arrives within 17 days. That's because of a change in law this year in 2020, in which essentially advocates and key staff at the legislature and key legislative leaders knew that USPS was going to be disrupted or delayed because of underfunding and manipulation by the Trump administration. And so we changed the law. Previously, if your ballot was postmarked by Election Day, it had to be received within 3 days. Now, in 2020, it can take up to 17 days and it will still be counted, okay? Additionally, if you don't want to use a ballot drop box and you don't want to use the mail, despite that extended arrival period, you can drop your ballot off at any voting site, any polling place, any vote center in your county, and it can be processed there. One thing I do want to note for you is something called ballot tracks. So in California now, you can sign up online to track your vote by mail ballot. And it will give you notifications. If you request them, it will give you notifications of when your ballot is on the way, when your ballot is being in transit back to the elections office, where it is in the processing, and when it's ultimately counted. If there's any problem with your ballot, for example, let's say you forget to sign your vote by mail envelope, you will be notified via ballot tracks. You can sign up for ballot tracks at where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. And maybe we can put that link in the comments. where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. And so I hope that increases your confidence somewhat in using voting by mail. We are at an unprecedented period in which I think confidence in our elections and in our democratic institutions has basically never been lower. And yet we're trying in California to do things that give voters some degree of transparency and some degree of trust. Okay. And I want to credit, by the way, I want to credit the Secretary of State's office and our county elections officials for working to bring bringing ballot tracks online in the middle of a very difficult year. Okay, so let's move to redistricting. The last time we met, the first 8 members, last time we streamed on Lunch with California Common Cause, the first 8 members of the Citizens Redistricting Commission, the statewide independent citizen-run redistricting commission, were meeting. They met the week of August 3rd for 4 days. The first 8 were tasked in that meeting with choosing the last 6, composing a 14-member commission. Their job was to balance, this is required by law, to balance the racial and ethnic diversity of the commission, the gender diversity of the commission, and the geographic diversity of the commission, and to bring a diversity of skills so that the 14-member commission reflected the state of California to the greatest extent possible, and so that it was prepared to handle the very difficult task of redistricting our congressional districts, our state senate districts, and our state assembly districts. The meeting was fully public, like all meetings of the Citizens Redistricting Commission. It was live streamed. There was lots of opportunities for public comment, and boy, oh boy, did they get plenty of public comment. They were really responsive to public comment in a way that I really admire. Lots of people stepped forward to make their voices heard about what they thought the full commission should look like, and the commission was clearly listening, which I think is a great sign. The whole point of the Citizens Redistricting Commission is to give regular folks and our communities an opportunity to have a voice in the redistricting process. The commission will ultimately have, last time it had over 100 meetings, and over 30 or 40 of them were throughout California, and they were meant to give regular folks an opportunity to come forward for a place in their community and give comment about what they thought their district line should look like. These are all things that are totally not possible if politicians are drawing their own districts behind closed doors. And so the spirit of responsiveness that we saw from the first 8 commissioners, I thought was really positive. Ultimately, the commission they chose the final 6, and we have a 14-member commission that includes 4 Latinx members, 4 API members, 3 African-American members. It includes LGBT representation, disability representation. It includes 8 women and 6 men. There's substantial racial diversity within each subpool, which I think is really interesting. For example, the 4 Republicans on the commission include 1 African-American, 1 Latina, 1 API, and 1 white commissioner. By constitutional requirement, the commission has 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 4 people who are no party preference or members of third parties. So you've got that ideological balance, you've got that racial and ethnic balance, gender balance, et cetera. With respect to where people are from, of the 14 commissioners, this is in alphabetical order. You've got 2 from Alameda County, 4 from Los Angeles County, 1 from Orange County, 1 from Santa Clara County, 1 from San Bernardino County, 1 from San Diego County, 2 from San Joaquin County, 1 from Sonoma County, and 1 from Yolo County. Now, were improvements possible? Of course, absolutely. Specifically, I think Latinx representation could be higher. The Latinx community is the largest racial and ethnic community in California at about 40%. We are plurality Latino in California, and also far northern representation. When people talk about Northern California, often they're talking about the Bay Area or Sacramento, but there's a lot of land up north, and in the 2010 commission, nobody from far northern California was present, and that's true again in the 2020 commission. It's a difficult issue there because you've got huge amounts of land, about 1/3 of the state or more by land, but about 1% of the state's population. And so how do you balance this question of representing people versus representing regions? It was a tricky thing, and it was a long subjective conversation for the first 8 commissioners. Nevertheless, despite the fact that improvements are possible without question, a lot of Californians can see themselves in this redistricting commission. I think that's a good thing. The first full meeting of the full 14-member commission, it will start on August 26th. That's next week. It could go for almost a week, I believe. They're going to do lots of training, and they're going to do lots of housekeeping. They got to get trained on how to use census data. They got to get trained on the Voting Rights Act. They got to get trained on California's demographics. They got to get trained on a whole host of things. We will be watchdogging the process and weighing in as we have throughout. This is a process that we have been, at California Common Cause, we have been watching carefully and asserting ourselves in for over a year, and that work will continue. Your support of California Common Cause helps to ensure fully transparent, fully independent redistricting in California. Last thing on redistricting, I just want to note that we are also working with lots of local jurisdictions that are looking for commissioners. So I could list a long list of cities and counties that are using independent commissions where we're working to support the jurisdiction and to bring diverse community members forward to apply. San Diego City, San Diego County, Escondido, Chula Vista, Oakland, Sacramento, LA County, Santa Barbara County, and blah, 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 blah. There are a number of localities that are still looking for independent commissioners. Santa Barbara County in particular, I think, needs applications and needs them ASAP. So if you're Central Coast, think about applying for the Santa Barbara Commission. Your support of California Common Cause not only means you're supporting statewide redistricting that is done in an independent and transparent way that puts regular community members first. You're also helping support us as we do that at the local level as well. Last quick note on money in politics, we're hiring. We are hiring a Northern California program manager. We are hoping to build out our Northern California money in politics work with the hope of bringing public financing reforms to Bay Area-based jurisdictions. And so if you or someone you know is passionate about building a better democracy, has policy skills and organizing skills, please check out that job application, that job posting. It's on our National Common Cause website in the career opportunities section. And we're looking for people that can work with a wide range of communities and understand that one of our goals here is to build a broader coalition behind money in politics reform. We cannot win transformative money in politics reform that improves our democracy and improves trust in our democratic institutions on a narrow demographic. We have to work to build a broader coalition behind these ideas. Okay, I just want to check in real quick to see if we have any questions. I'm happy to take those. I want you to encourage you to follow us on social media. You can follow our organizational Twitter account at Common Cause CA. You could follow our organizational Instagram account at CA Common Cause. And you can follow me on Twitter at _Jonathan Stein. Next week, again, we're joined by Julia Marks and Adria Orr at Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus, who are actually my former team members when I was at ALC before becoming the executive director here. We're going to talk about Asian American civic engagement and voter participation. We're going to talk about language access in elections and in census. And we're going to talk about poll monitoring and protecting the vote on election day. As always, we appreciate you for your support of Common Cause. Thank you for being with us in this fight. We'll see you next week.